Now John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting, and people came and said to him, "Why do John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" Hi, I'm Gary, and you're watching 7 Minutes in the Word. It is not clear that the events in today's lesson occurred at the same time as the feast that Matthew gave in honor of Jesus. Matthew and Mark both give an account that could imply that some passage of time occurred between the questioning of Jesus about him eating with sinners and the questioning about his disciples not fasting. However, in Luke's account, the two events, Jesus eating with sinners and the questioning of Jesus about his disciples not fasting, seems to have been connected. Luke 5:30 through 33. And the Pharisees and their scribes grumbled at his disciples, saying, "Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners?" And Jesus answered them, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." And they said to him, "The disciples of John fast often and offer prayers, and so do the disciples of the Pharisees, but yours eat and drink." In Luke's telling of the event, it seems that those who were questioning Jesus first asked him about why he was eating with sinners. If he was righteous, why was he keeping company with the unrighteous? And then they asked him about his teaching of his disciples. Why was he not teaching them to fast as the Pharisees taught their disciples and as John had taught his disciples? Now, it is important to understand that the only fast that was commanded in the law of Moses was on the National Day of Atonement. Now, the Old Testament did recognize fasting as being an act of piety, but only one day was commanded for fasting, and that was the National Day of Atonement. Now, by Jesus' day, the religious leaders had come to show their piety twice a week by fasting. And John, well, he certainly did fast, and he fasted to show repentance. And it's very likely, and certainly most likely, that he taught his disciples to do the same. In fact, after John had received reports about Jesus and the things that he was doing, he sent a message to Jesus asking him if he was indeed the Messiah. And you can find that in Luke's Gospel, chapter 7, verses 18 through 19. And so even John the Baptist questioned whether Jesus was the Messiah based upon the reports that he had heard. So these two groups would have seen Jesus and his disciples eating and drinking, particularly with sinners, as being lacking in piety, as being impious. Continuing in Mark, the 2nd chapter, verses 19 through 22. And Jesus said to them, "Can the wedding guest fast while the bridegroom is with them? As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast in that day. No one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old garment. If he does, the patch tears away from it, the new from the old, and a worse tear is made. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins. If he does, the wine will burst the skins, and the wine is destroyed, and so are the skins. But new wine is for fresh wineskins." Jesus calls himself the bridegroom, which may be a reference to Hosea, the 2nd chapter, verses 19 and 20, when God is portrayed as the bridegroom of Israel. The bridegroom theme is also used in Revelation 19 and 7, and then in Revelation 21, verses 2 and 9, where Jesus is portrayed as the bridegroom of the church. In today's text, Jesus is not saying that fasting is wrong, only that fasting is inconsistent with being in the presence of the bridegroom. Fasting is for a time of sorrow, sorrow over a death or sorrow because of unrighteousness. While the disciples are in the presence of Jesus, the righteous one, they cannot be sorrowful. The time for sorrow will come. It will come soon enough when Jesus is taken away from them. In verses 21 and 22, Jesus deals with the progression from the old Mosaic covenant to the coming new covenant in his own blood. God has come into the world and he is setting things straight. He is making all things right. The old covenant had served its purpose. It had prepared the way for Jesus and his new covenant. Jesus did not come to patch the old covenant, but he came to establish, to make a new one. Nor did Jesus come to destroy the old covenant, but he came to do what man could not do. He came to perfectly fulfill the requirements of the law. In Matthew the 5th chapter, verse 17, Jesus said, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." Like old wineskins that had served their purpose, the law had served its purpose. Old wineskins could not be used to hold new wine because the fermentation process would burst the wineskins, and both the wine and the wineskins would be lost. The old covenant had served its purpose. It had taught man about God. It had prepared man for the coming of the Messiah. The Messiah came to establish a new covenant, not based on the blood of bulls and goats that could not forgive sins, but based upon his own sacrifice, God's perfect lamb, whose blood was wholly sufficient to forgive all of man's sins. Jesus was here to proclaim the gospel of God, and that gospel was something new. The good news was that God was about to do something that had never been done before. God himself was going to make things the way they had been before evil wrecked his creation. God was going to erase all that evil had done. God himself was going to pay the price to redeem man and to set him free. Thank you for watching today. Please give us a thumbs up and click that subscribe button down in the lower right-hand corner. And do come back again next week for another 7 Minutes in the Word.